I think the importance of reconciliation really touches on the heart of just getting away from this idea of self-sufficiency, right? That I can do it all on my own, I can answer all the questions on my own, I can figure it out on my own. And it also keeps us away from that kind of poisonous mentality that, like, that I've got to be perfect, ultimately. Our perfection is rooted in the perfection of Jesus Christ. And reconciliation is the way by which we're able to be brought into that deeper and fuller union with Him. Because every time we sin, and that's the tough thing, is that, like, I think specifically as Americans, we don't like to say that we sin, because like we like to have like our appearance all together and stuff like that. But ultimately, the importance of confession is that when I sin, I begin to turn away from the Lord, but He never turns away from me. And we have this idea that when we sin, He's turning His back and He's going to wait until we figure it out. But no, rather, confession helps me to reorient myself back to the Lord so that I can be face to face with Him. This idea of, reconciliation, the cilia being literally like eyelashes, that we can be face to face with Him again, reconcilia, back with face to face, eyelash to eyelash almost. So the importance of confession is, I think, twofold in that I have to admit that I can't do this alone. I can't do this alone. And then secondly, that it's a great grace to be able to share your heart with somebody. I know in my own life, the things that I've been most ashamed of, I immediately was able to kind of revamp and reorient my life after I entrusted that to somebody that I really loved. And they heard me and received me, but let me know, hey, you're still loved. Confession is the perfect fulfillment of that encounter. Is not only are you confessing it to the priest, but the priest who is operating in the person of Jesus Christ, and who's able to look at you and still say, you're good enough, you're forgiven, go and sin no more, by the grace of God. We often forget what confession is for, or we assume that the priest hasn't heard it, or like that he's going to be particularly surprised by like how good I am at sinning, and that's just not true. But I think even deeper than that is, it's hard to be that vulnerable. It's hard to be that vulnerable about something that's really covered in shame, covered in guilt, covered in embarrassment with somebody that you feel like you don't know that well. And that's the point, is that in confession, and this is specifically why it helps me to, different people either go face to face or they go behind the screen. I like to go behind the screen because it helps me to remember that my job isn't to impress Father, right? That my job is really to bare my soul, to bare my heart, believing that I'm really giving this to Jesus Christ. Because it's a very different thing to say, well, if I can just tell Him straight to God, like, okay, sure. But how vulnerable are you being in that moment? Instead, when you're vulnerable enough to entrust that to another person, just like you entrust your heart to someone you love, with the deepest, most intimate places of your heart, when you do that with Jesus Christ, it changes. It changes you. It opens you up to a new sense of vitality, vulnerability, but ultimately helps you to reorient your compass where you're not the one that's constantly making the map, right? Not the one controlling all the elements. That it allows you to let go of control and trust that to Jesus through His priest, so that He can guide you out of that encounter. By going to confession, we in turn are able to walk out of a confessional and love people around us and say, dude, I get that. Like, I know. I've been there. I struggle with that. It helps us to be more authentically human and being able to reach out as missionary disciples because we know what it is to be broken and in need of a Savior. One of my favorite quotes is that God didn't come to hand out good conduct awards. Like He didn't come down here to say, like, you know what? Joe's doing a pretty good job. He's like, no, I love Joe, and sometimes Joe messes up, and I want to bring him up out of that and guide him into deeper and deeper and deeper relationship with me. And confession is one of the most beautiful ways outside of the Holy Eucharist that we can do that. Sometimes after confession, people do experience kind of that, you're able to exhale and say, thank God I'm not carrying that around anymore. Thank God that I can know with certainty that I'm forgiven. But at the same time, we're given a penance after confession. And that's not necessarily so that we remember really just how bad we are, but the whole purpose of it is the very first thing we do upon getting out of the confessional is to begin living out those two great commandments, to love God with your entire mind, heart, and soul, and to love your neighbor as yourself, is that it gives you an immediate how-to. But after confession, you really and truly are made new. You're made new. I can remember just confessing some really difficult sins that I was very ashamed of and that I had really kind of kept close to the chest because I didn't want a priest to judge me, right? And finally just being able to say, Lord, like, I'm over this. I'm tired of trying to treat cancer with Advil, basically. I'm tired of treating the symptoms. I want to treat the root, which is essentially like my need for your mercy. And being able to do that, and that being a life-changing moment for me as well. Lent is the season in which we're preparing for the most important event in human history, right? Which is a man who is perfectly innocent, perfectly loving, perfectly good, and not just some idea, not just some story, but a living human person who said, you, Joe, you, Dina, are worth everything to me, and I give my life for you. And sometimes we need to pray for the grace to have our minds blown by that reality, because when we're able to internalize that little by little, it almost becomes like, wow, like how could I not go? How could I not go? And that doesn't mean it's not scary. That doesn't mean that it's not something that makes us kind of cringe, because of course it does. We're not made for sin. We're made for life. And we go to the one who can give us that life in abundance, both on this side of heaven and in the next. So that's what this whole season is about, really, is encountering the deepest mystery, which is a man who loved so greatly and loved me so greatly in my mess and in my sin that he gave everything for me. And it's our opportunity to receive that gift and then extend it back out into the world that is so hungry for it.